All right, for the flying geese blocks, you are going to have kind of your center or your background piece, and then you need to make the points. So what I'm going to do is just cut a couple rectangles here, and then I'm going to find some squares that I can sew to make the points of the flying geese. Now what you have to remember is these are not going to be perfect. So there's going to be some points cut off. There's going to be maybe some issues with these blocks that you don't really like, and that's just how it is going to be. So with a rectangle piece, if you look and you sew from corner to corner, I'm going to set my ruler here from corner to corner. I can kind of push this back and audition how this is going to end up. And you can see I'm going to end up trimming this off. So that's all right. You just have to be aware of when you use a rectangle for your points or your corner edges, you are going to be trimming a little bit more because it's not going to be covered. If you really want to keep a point and make it so it's just not like a snowball block, you need to make sure that your second blocks overlap your first. So if this one is too small for you, I'm just going to look around in my piles here and I'm going to find another square, or I can make one if I want to use. So this one is wide enough, so you just need your square to be wide enough, obviously, for that. And then if I overlap it just a little bit, I can trim this down. So when I sew on this piece, and again, I can use my ruler to kind of audition this and see what happens. So as you can see, if I have already sewn this piece down, and I'm just going to fold it back really quick and hold it down, and then I've got this piece, I'm going to come in here and sew this one down. So I'm going to let the ruler hold that down. You can see that I have my flying geese all set up. So there is a teeny tiny point here, and I will have to trim this flying geese, and I'll probably lose this point as well. But you can see that that would work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my two pieces that I'm going to use for my points, and I'm either going to use, I believe this is like a hair marker or a mechanical pencil. I'm going to draw a line from corner to corner here. And that will give me my sewing line. So I've got those marked, and I can set this one aside. I have this other flying geese unit that I need to find some outside squares for as well. So what I can do is, if I want my outside squares to kind of be the same, I'm just going to grab this and cut this right in half. Now, what I can do as well is, if I'm not sure that this is going to cover what I want, I can put my fabric on a diagonal, and then that will allow me to kind of stitch it and then flip it. So this is a different way of doing it, but what I'm going to do is just hold this down and stitch this. When you do this method, you need to make sure that this top piece overlaps or comes off of your background fabric at least 1/4 inch. Okay, so that is one rule we have to obey, and then I'm going to sew that down. So I'm going to just lay that right there and take this to my machine and sew it, as well as sew these two down. All right, so now I have this sewn down. I'm going to give it a good press before I trim it off. You want to kind of press it and make sure everything is good before you start trimming everything off, because you might find that you need to make an adjustment if you need. So with this piece, what I'm going to do is fold this back, and I am going to just trim this 1/4 inch. I don't want to see the blue because it will leave a shadow, so I'm just going to trim it off. I'm not going to worry about cutting this edge off quite yet. That will come in a minute. So what I'm going to do is kind of lay this one down, and I can play with what it looks like. If I want it shallower, as far as, you know, really shallow point, that would be a lot of fun. Or I can do a very high point. So you can kind of play with the angles of your flying geese. What I'm going to do is just line it up right along this edge, and I'm going to sew that together. So for the second piece, again, I've already pressed it, so I'm going to fold this one back. I'm going to trim this off. These are large enough I can put in my scrap bundle for later. And now I fold this back. I'm not going to trim it yet. I'm just going to kind of play with this piece first. And so I've got my line already marked, and I'm going to sew this from corner to corner. Okay, just like before, I'm going to press this before I do any kind of trimming. I just want to make sure everything is good to go. So I'm just going to press them really good. And with this block, we are going to fold this back again, just as we did before. Measure 1/4 inch with our ruler, trim this off, save those little bits for later. And now we get to have some fun with trimming it up. So what I can do is go as deep as I can go on this outside edge. And then again, you're going to see that I can't come further out because then I would have a really off angle. And these are going to be kind of wonky as they are anyways. So I'm going to miss and lose out on this point, but I'm okay with it. So I'm going to trim this side to line that up, as well as trim my top. And I'm going to flip it and repeat the process for the other side. I can go as deep as I want on this block, or I can trim it if I want to and make it perfect points. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to kind of have some fun. So I'm going to cut and trim off this edge, knowing that right now my points are actually coming off of the flying geese, which makes it kind of fun. So there is one flying geese. Now I have this other piece. And there is quite a bit of waste on this because you're trimming them off. But again, if the pieces are big enough, they can just go back into your pile and used for later, as well as for fillers. So I'm going to fold that back, and I'm going to trim off my extra triangle, put it in my pile for later. And now I get to kind of trim up this flying geese. I'm going to play with my ruler just a little bit and see how deep I can go with my point. If I go kind of narrow, I think I can go right here. So this piece is quite large, and I can go ahead and save that for later. I do have a little corner picked out over here, and I might trim that up again. So I'm going to just trim that up, and now I have my 2 flying geese units. I'm just going to make sure that all the edges are straight and flat. So now I have my blocks all sewn together. I can repeat this process, and I can start sewing them in rows or side by side. I might leave them individual and use them for fillers later on. I might do like 4 together to make a four patch, like a larger block, or again put them into rows. You could stack them. So there's a lot of options once you have all your flying geese kind of put together individually. If you want, you can kind of coordinate them. So I'd make a bunch that looked similar to this one, but it really is improv. You're just having fun. So you can go full scrappy, or you can do a little bit more organized. And maybe with this one, I could have chosen something else that was similar to this fabric that was still but different. So lots of options with the flying geese, but that is how you make the flying geese block, improv style.